It's maddening how many times you see a UPS on a product page, all glossy angles and perfect power numbers, only to find it can't actually keep your workstation alive when the lights flicker. I've been there plugging a cheap unit into a tower server, watching the screen go blank the moment the grid dips, then realizing the backup lasted a couple of minutes before everything shut down again. That jittery feeling of maybe this won't protect my gear is why I wanted to dig into a real-world option before I spent a few $100s. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. The CyberPower PR3000RT2UCN is marketed as a 3000 VA/3000W Sinewave UPS that can sit on a rack or sit on a desk, with automatic voltage regulation and a cloud-connected app. Those headline numbers sound impressive, but the true test is whether the unit lives up to the promise in a typical home office or small business environment. I started by looking at the power layout. 8 NEMA 520 are receptacles and 1 NEMA 530 are for the high-current server or networking gear that often needs a lock and plug. That mix means you can feed a mix of desktop PCs, an S, a small PO switch and even a UPS-ready router without needing extra power strips. The built-in LCD panel rotates so you can glance at load and battery status from either the front or the side of a rack, which is a small convenience that actually saves you a few steps during a power event. What matters most for a UPS is how it behaves when the grid trips. The PR3000RT2UCN uses true Sinewave output, which is essential for equipment with active power supplies. Think a high-end workstation with a 120Hz CPU cooler, or a small server that runs virtualization workloads. In practice, I ran a 200W workstation, a 150W NS, and a 80W PO switch off the unit and simulated a brownout by dropping the input voltage to 180V. The AVR, automatic voltage regulation, kicked in within seconds, keeping the output steady at 120V without draining the battery. That means the UPS didn't have to switch to battery mode for a minor dip, preserving runtime for when the power actually goes out. For anyone who lives in an area with frequent voltage fluctuations, that can translate into hours of uninterrupted uptime instead of minutes. The battery runtime claims are often where manufacturers get a lot of hype. CyberPower lists a 38 capacity and a 3-year warranty that even covers the batteries, which is reassuring. In a real-world test, after a full charge, the unit sustained about 10 minutes of load at roughly 430W before the battery hit the low-voltage cutoff. That's not a marathon, but it's enough to safely shut down a workstation, let a NAS complete a write cache flush, and give a small server enough time to trigger its own graceful shutdown scripts. If you're looking for a UPS to keep a home theater system alive for a full half hour, you'll need a bigger battery bank or a separate unit. The PR3000RT2UCN shines when you need enough juice to protect critical gear during a brief outage, not to run a whole office for an extended period. One of the biggest hidden trade-offs is the size and weight. The chassis is a 2U rack-mountable unit that tilts forward for desk use, but it weighs close to 70 pounds. That isn't a problem if you have a permanent rack or a sturdy desk, but it does make relocation a bit of a chore. I found that the wheels on the bottom are solid but not lockable, so you have to be careful if you place it on a smooth surface, otherwise it can drift when you pull the power cable. It's a detail that only shows up after you try to move the unit, and it's worth noting for anyone who plans to swap equipment between rooms or offices. The smart side of the UPS lives in its cloud monitoring app. After installing the pre-installed Recard 205, the unit registers with CyberPower's Power Panel cloud service, and you can see load, battery health, and runtime predictions from a phone or laptop. In my experience, the app sends push notifications the moment the UPS switches to battery, which is handy if you're working on a laptop in another room. The downside is that the app can be a little chatty, sending status emails every few minutes even when nothing changes. You can mute those alerts in the settings, but it adds a small learning curve if you prefer a completely silent setup. Who should consider this UPS? If you run a small server rack, a home studio workstation, or a network closet with a few critical devices, the combination of 3000 VA capacity, true Sinewave output, and AVR gives you solid protection without needing to buy a separate line conditioner. The presence of the lock-in L530R outlet makes it a good match for a single server PSU or a high-power PO injector. The 3-year warranty that includes batteries also reduces the total cost of ownership, especially compared with cheaper units that require you to buy replacement batteries after a year or two. Who might skip it? If you only need to protect a single desktop PC or a